We will call the meeting to order. The first item up is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any motions?
I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are we live yet? Do we need to be voting online, Julie?
The next item up,
Hang.
as we vote on this, will be public comments. Ms. Taylor, do we have any?
Yes. There are four.
Okay.
And they are agenda items. Let me go.
Okay.
Did we start at 2? Starting at 2? 1. Oh, 2, yeah, okay. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hi, Ms. Jeffrey. We just started.
Okay. All right, first up is Ms. Sarah Simpson, followed by Lisa Kucinich, Kat Martin, and then Kathy Moore. Sarah Simpson, please.
We're in public comments.
Hello. This is my first time doing this because it's something I'm passionate about. I want to understand why we're trying to implement changes in our dress code that require clothing to just above the knee, a dress code that requires kids cover their shoulders, a dress code that prohibits leggings without a long tunic-style top. Are my daughter's legs, shoulders, and leg shape shameful? We live in a society that turns our girls into sex objects. We must fight this culture. My daughter's body, any girl's body, is not responsible for boys' thoughts. We must teach our boys right from wrong, period. Girls are equal to boys, must be treated as such. I expect this to be a lesson taught at home and in school. It must be the culture we create in our public schools in order to fight toxic masculinity. So, really, we don't want to have a sexist dress code, and I don't think anybody goes into creating a dress code with that intention in mind. But there are really great studies out there, and there are good examples and models of what a dress code should be. The American Psychological Association says that girls are the highest group of people being sexualized. So let's not contribute to that. Let's do our part to change that. Also, studies show that when people are thinking about their appearance, so if we're making a big issue out of this, it's preventing our students, our children, from performing well on cognitive tests like math tests. It leads to more girls experiencing eating disorders, low self-esteem, and depression. Again, I don't think anybody's intention, but a part of the problem. Often people will say the intent behind the policy is to not distract or disrupt. Way back in 2000, oh man, okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, I appreciate it. All right, next up is Lisa Kucinich, followed by Kat Martin, and then Kathy Moore.
Good afternoon. I'm here today to respectfully share a few important areas of concern in relation to restrictive dress codes. And the points I'm about to make here are based on research. Restrictive dress codes that highlight certain types of clothing are as distracting promote a culture that suggests girls are responsible for wearing clothing that does not distract boys. This puts responsibility for boys' behavior on girls. In effect, it excuses boys' behavior. These messages are dangerous and promote a culture in which girls are more likely to hide instances of sexual assault. Restrictive dress codes focusing on fit disproportionately affect students with varying body types. These kids have much more difficulty buying clothing that does not violate the dress code. Even when dress code verbiage does not call out gender specifically, the differences in clothing available for girls and boys place disproportionate difficulty on girls to find clothing. Girls of color are often hypersexualized and viewed as older than they are. As a result, African American girls are disproportionately disciplined for dress code violations. Dress codes that focus on what boys and girls are supposed to look like are particularly harmful to queer, transgender, and non-binary youth. We have opportunity here to teach our children mutual respect for each other, for each other's bodies, and differing lifestyles. Imagine the far-reaching benefits of raising boys and girls with a high level of mutual respect for each other, no matter what type of packaging we come in. At a time in which our country is more divided than ever, let's set an example for unity and inclusivity.
Thank you. All right, next up, Kat Martin, followed by Kathy Moore.
Hello, I'm Kat Martin. I'm a CCSD parent, and I'm concerned about the current CCSD dress code as well as the revisions that are being proposed on today's agenda. As you just heard from Lisa, the research shows that restrictive dress codes are harmful to students. And I believe that when one student in our community is harmed, our entire community is harmed. I think that we can work together to create a dress code that protects the educational opportunity of all of our students. We've organized a group of concerned parents, teachers, and students who completed the research that Lisa just shared and more. We also have found other school districts that have done the work to improve their dress codes. This work took these districts months and months, sometimes over a year of meetings, as well as public comment and research. And we have the privilege of using their work as a starting place for our district. This morning, I sent an overview of our research and a model dress code written by Oregon Now to the board. We share the same values as this organization. We believe that all students should be able to dress comfortably for school without fear of discipline or body shaming. We believe that all students and staff should understand that they are responsible for managing their own personal distractions without regulating individual students' clothing. We believe that teachers should focus on teaching without the additional and often uncomfortable burden of dress code enforcement. We believe that students should not face unnecessary barriers to school attendance. And finally, we believe that reasons for conflict and inconsistent discipline should be minimized whenever possible. We understand that members of the administration and principals have asked for clarity on dress code enforcement. This is a perfect opportunity for us to ensure that our policy is a good policy that makes our schools stronger and improves the education of all of our students. Thank you for your time. Please work with us to move this district forward.
Thank you. Next is Kathy Moore, please.
Thank you. We are just the tip of the iceberg. As Kat said, we've heard from and met with many more concerned parents and teachers who want to be involved but couldn't be here today due to the time of this meeting. We have offered to serve on a committee with administrators, educators, parents, and students to craft a better code, but no such committee has been formed. We have requested but not received data from the district on disciplinary referrals due to dress code violations. With no data showing support for the implementation of a stricter dress code and nationwide data showing that such codes disproportionately affect girls and minorities, I fear that this revision is a policy in search of a problem. The genesis of this revision was a request to clarify the appeals process for parents who do not want to comply with uniforms. This proposal does not address that request. Granted, we haven't yet seen the revisions to the original proposal, but that makes it doubly important that we have time to review and comment on further revisions. The 50,000 children in the CCSD schools, their parents, and educators will be affected by this policy every day and deserve a thoughtful, transparent, and deliberative process. I want to emphasize that we are stronger together. We are not here to cast stones at the CCSD board. Only by collaborating can we build a dress code that is equitable to our kids regardless of race, gender, or shape. A code that is enforceable by school staff, allows our children to express their individuality, and doesn't body shame all those who are already vulnerable. Please vote against this proposal and let us help immediately start crafting a dress code appropriate for our schools and our children. By including parents, students, and educators, we'll be teaching our kids invaluable lessons: compromise, debate, civics, that they can affect change in the world. These skills are much more important in the workplace than skirt length. School is for learning. Let this debate over the dress code be a teacher. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item up is textbook adoptions. Are there any questions on that, the recommendation coming forward?
So move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on it?
I have a question, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
So Mrs. Belcher, when we adopt these for the appropriate school, i.e. middle school math, will all the schools use this, or is there an opt-out policy where some of these schools may choose not to use these textbooks? I'm just trying to figure out if we're going to be consistent or.
The hope is it would be a countywide adoption for both illustrative math and for the elementary school, which is, thank you. I talk about it all the time, Bridges.
The hope, is there anything we can do to make that the reality?
No, it's almost already, I think my point was it's almost already adopted for half the counties, and now we're going to go all in.
Okay. And does this, we've purchased some online programming in math in particular, and I honestly didn't have time to research it and look it up this weekend, but I thought something with Florida State or FSU, but we've got some online math programming. Does that draw your memory, Dr. Postaway?
We piloted Algebra Nation.
Right, do we still have that?
It is still available for use. It's supplemental. It's not a primary.
Right, and is it compatible with what we're doing? I want to make sure when we're layering stuff that we're remaining integrated. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Reverend Collins?
Yeah, thank you. The math books have been quite a challenge. Not getting them is not the challenge. That's not it. Using them. You know, I've been to several schools, and I've called different schools, and not one of them are using the district-issued math book. Not one. They're either on a table in the classroom, on a table somewhere, or on a shelf in the back. But all the teachers had what I call maybe syllabus, or work they print off a line somewhere, or so, and a few could tell you the source where it came from. But all the math teachers were on their own, going different directions. There wasn't any stability at all. And so when I my own kids, I said, well, show me this in the book. Where are you coming from? So they looked and said, well, we can't find it. So we wrote emails back to teachers and said, well, where are you getting this from? And so some could provide some reference, but it wasn't anything the school was supporting. And so when that happens, you have the great disparity, such a great disparity that we have in the math now among the different race of kids, that some kids are getting it and many kids are not getting it. And so hopefully this will put a stop. If we tell teachers that, hey, this is what we're using, anything else you're going to use has to be approved through the district through some type of means. It needs to be approved, that we're all going to have to be on the same page, doing the same work, learning the same thing at one time. And otherwise you have chaos. When you look at our math results, they're not good across Charleston County, not at all, especially for minority children and Spanish children. We have to do better. So I think that's much of the problems that teachers are teaching from different sources that we can't account for. And I really don't want any teacher going online, finding something we can bring it back to my kids to learn, that I don't have a book to go with it. To provide a book with it, that's a different story. But we got to have reference. We can go back and study and learn how to do it at home. When they don't have a book for it, they can't study it at home, they can't practice at home, they can't never master it at home because there's no time to practice it without the knowledge.
All right, thank you. Can you call the question?
I would, just for clarification, because we sit on a board and we have access to information that a lot of the community does not. Is it true that out of 19 middle schools, we have the vast majority of them not using their math books? He said that he's called schools, gone into schools, and the vast majority of the middle schools were not using math books. I mean, I would like to find out if that's true, or at least put some public perception out there correctly.
I didn't say the middle schools in particular now, I said the schools I've called.
Okay, well, we have 86 schools, so.
Yeah, most of them are not using the math books.
Are we saying that 40 or 50 schools are not using a textbook?
There was a math textbook before the adoption as well, but the adoption, here's our challenge. We're in the midst of we got ahead of the state, which is a good thing because we picked strong curriculum in illustrative math and in Bridges.
Mm-hmm.
So we started that 3 years ago. Not every school got the new math curriculum because we were buying it and doing a gradual implementation. so that we're piloting in some schools.
Mm-hmm.
Now that the state has approved, and with your vote today, we'll fully adopt the model across the entire county.
Let's be very specific. The ones not piloting, we're not using textbooks.
They should have used every day, they should have had the math curriculum.
Right, we're not talking
prior
about
to
a
that, but
curriculum
you wouldn't
brand,
have
we're
seen
talking
the
about
same
his
textbooks.
concern is that they're not accessing textbooks in our schools. And I want to make sure that that's not a correct perception.
They should have had the existing textbooks in our schools. I think there is an issue where folks are often using the intervention online tools more than they probably should, but there should still be a math textbook in the classroom.
Thank you.
Yeah, they have it in the classroom, just not really using it.
Well, the hope is now that now we've got district-wide adoption, we can make sure that everyone's using illustrative math and bridges across the county.
Mr. Chair, can we
Call the
call
question.
Okay, if you gonna, all right. All right, if you'll please vote. The next item up is focus on student achievement.
Can I,
Excuse me.
Priscilla?
Okay, got it. Excuse me, we've got a motion to approve the textbook as recommended in the, your packet. So we need a vote. Mr. Hollenshed
The textbook adoption.
and Ms. Jeffrey?
Okay. She votes yes. Say it
Yes,
again.
okay, all right.
Okay,
I
yeah.
heard her.
Okay. She votes
All
yes.
right, the next item up is focus on student achievement. Ms. Belcher.
Essentially, I wanted to present what we're thinking about doing for the acceleration schools. I know I shared some information in the board packet. I wondered if the board had questions about it, or if it would be most helpful if I go over it at the high level.
Yes, just a wave top.
Yeah, wave top and let us ask
Yeah.
questions. We should have read it.
Okay, no worries. What we're presenting is a strategy for helping the 14 acceleration schools, essentially through three main priorities or levers that we think are critically important. One is talent, so making sure that the schools have leadership talent as well as teachers that are a good fit philosophically for that school program, and that they're hiring early enough to always have access to the most talented applicants within the pool. Our goal also, as you know, is a longer-term investment in building a leadership pipeline so that as we have vacancies in any of our principalships, but particularly in our acceleration schools, we'll have a cadre of folks who are ready for the principalship, and we can easily move them into that. So that's the University of Virginia partnership, which the next agenda item goes deeply into. So talent is one. The second piece of our strategy is really to go deep, and this kind of goes to the last agenda item that we were just talking about on core curriculum. As the district, in a way that I really admire, has invested in things like adaptive technology and other outside tools, the actual instructional core, like what does it mean to teach reading, writing, math really well? What does that look like? What are the key curricular choices that we're making so that every student in the second grade across the county is getting a similar instructional experience, so that if you move from one school to another, it's not dramatically different? What is that core curriculum? We need to invest and go deep in that around professional development. And in places where we have some gaps, actually start to pilot some things so that we're in a stronger place longer term. So for example, right now we have, I keep sort of touting the wonder of bridges and illustrative math. In part that's because those are curricula that are on the best list across the country within math. They cover both procedural math as well as conceptual understanding and real world problems. And they do it in a spiral strategy, so the idea is that they're constantly reinforcing skills and concepts over and over again, so that as they get more in depth, kids are still practicing skills they should already learn. ELA is a different matter. We've had less consistency across the board in our approach to English language arts. Fortunately, the district adopted a phonics program to pilot open court a couple of years ago, and that is slowly moving across the system. We want to make sure every K to second grade at least, or K to 3, has the phonics program. Systematic phonics is just part of the science of reading, particularly for kids in schools that are chronically under-resourced. Systematic phonics is a key to the language of learning, and up until 3rd grade, you're learning how to read, and then after 3rd grade, you're reading to learn. So it's really important that we have that strong foundation. And so for the acceleration schools, we're going to invest particularly in making sure they all have open court, that they have professional development to use it well, and that they have a way of making sure that the wraparound literacy program So this is beyond phonics. This is reading comprehension, reading fluency, and being able to pull from text to make meaning for yourself or answer text-based questions, that those pieces are also in the curriculum program. And that's where there's a little bit of a hole across the system. So some schools are still using the curriculum around the last adoption, to the point you were making about math, which would have been literacy by design or, thank you, journeys. But we're looking to make sure that the curriculum that we adapt in this next phase actually has more access to grade level text. So for example, North Charleston Elementary School is piloting a full thing of open court, K to 5, which includes the access to grade level text. We'll have a sense of whether that works or not. The bottom line is, if they don't have the curriculum, we're going to dust it off and ensure that they do, and provide, again, coaching so they can use it well in the classroom. This is a capacity building investment, but the idea being, a lot of times I see the hardest working person in the classroom is the teacher, not the students. So how do we make sure that more of the intellectual lift is coming on the kids? And some of that is like teachers having the confidence to give a little bit of more freedom to children to grapple in a productive way with hard materials. So that's our aim on the second strand. So talent, improving rigorous curriculum. And then the last piece is making sure that the larger environment is supportive and helpful to the school principal's vision if they have one. So all principals have a vision for how to improve their school. But obviously, if the vision was going to work out of the gate, we would already be there, right? This is hard work. It is not easy. It's adaptive work. Even our strongest leaders will have gaps on that. So the point here is, let's start with the principal's plan and make sure that we're supporting aspects of that plan that they find most meaningful. And in places where they're not sure, let's help them develop a plan. And what I've realized in talking now to every acceleration principal is that the issues are very different depending on the school, which is not a shock. Some of them vary based on the grade level of kids, but others are very based on some of the challenges that they have. So for example, North Charleston Elementary has been a SIG program, so part of that big grant. There's access to a decent amount of financial investment. That grant is coming to an end. How do they plan well to keep the resources that have really made a difference for kids up through that investment and make sure it's not a dip later? And that is much more on the financial side than it is on the academic side. We also are exploring the option of waivers, if that's going to be critical to the principal's strategy, and making sure that we have a support team in the central office that prioritizes the acceleration schools to the extent that we can, remove obstacles at the bureaucratic level to help the principal obtain the So that's it at the high level.
What questions any board members have? Go ahead.
So, and I think that the two of these, this and the next one, are really kind of together, and it would do us a disservice to speak of them separately. I was under the impression that the University of Virginia's thing was leadership development programming.
That's right.
This document that they've given us references priority schools, references certain schools, and some other things where I think it's got mission creep, where it's going into district-wide non-education strategies. But to this part alone, are they thinking 14 acceleration schools while you're thinking 14 acceleration schools? I mean, I'm looking at two different bodies, you and them, and two different ways of approaching. And I'm wondering if we're duplicating, overlapping, or not coordinated. So is UVA focusing on the 14 acceleration schools?
Where does 14 come from? I thought it was
It's the
15.
number of them. It's the
It was
number of
originally
schools.
15,
It's
but Burns
15.
Elementary is going to fully Meeting Street next year as a
Right.
reminder, so it's really 15 or 4 designated,
Right.
but that's the difference. So UVA is focusing on the 14 schools, but let me provide a little more context from this perspective. So the proposal, they originally made a proposal as part of the RFP that was issued, and they do a lot of work generally and turnaround work across systems and providing additional support in that. So we got a proposal from them, and as part of their work, they do a diagnostic and come in and interview. They have a format around the key priorities that helps them set the agenda for the ways in which we're going to do this work. So that's the diagnostic that was shared with the board on areas of opportunity and gap. It is broader than just, say, a teacher leadership Although I think the piece of it is, what does effective leadership look like at multiple levels of the system, which does include this piece, I think, around instruction and culture, which play out there too.
I think that does involve development, and we'll go to the UVA thing later, because they're not saying here's a gap, they're saying here's a gap, and if you enter into an agreement with us, we're gonna help you do recruiting and training. That's not what we asked them to come talk to us about. Only not that it doesn't need to be done, but where, it's mission creep. So when I look at your analysis here, and you are exactly correct, we're talking money. So this is an information item. And I have to ask, there's no dollar figures, there's no idea how much money we're doing, and it's an information item. So if you walk out of here today and we don't stop you or we don't okay you, what are we looking for in terms of what's going to show up in the budget? What decisions have we inadvertently made financially and educationally by accepting this information item today? Because there's a lot of stuff in here about central office, creating an acceleration schools team in the central office. You go back to the charter school acceleration position that I think then morphed into an acceleration position. Then UVA is talking about a leadership position to lead their work done. And as you can see, that starts to look like a lot of people and or dollars that we're not making any decisions on and we're not being told about. So I just want to kind of get where we are on this. I don't want to come and find out that we've got to raise taxes because we agreed today not to stop you from doing this. I mean, that's a worst case scenario and a bad example, but probably the easiest one to verbalize.
Right now, we haven't given an update, and we've given the update to the board on other mission critical items, and so I think we were overdue just to have a sense of where are we now, and so we're thinking about the mission critical work. Any additional investment is going to come through the board through the budget process. So I will tell you that some things that we're clearly thinking about is piloting some ELA curriculum. Now, I am not expecting that anything you're saying today is saying that you agree to that. My assumption is it's going to come in a board proposal, thus I'm not moving forward on anything until we have the approval of the budget. So UVA, as you said, it is still, we're going to their initial boot camp, myself, Dr. Williams, and Ms. Simmons, to go through that high-level planning on what are our key priorities and where are our learning edges as district leaders to best support the program. That is just the only commitment that we've made prior to entering into a formal agreement, in part because that's coming through the budget as well.
All right, Mr. Frazier?
My question was somewhat budget related too, because it states initial budget implications, but it doesn't have anything associated with it. We've got a bunch of stuff we were talking about implementing next year, and we still do not yet know. So the sooner we see numbers, the more comfortable.
Precisely, because and if I could piggyback, I don't want those numbers to be part of a budget decision. They need to be part of an education decision that drives our budget. And far too often, we get a budget that says, we need you to approve this budget, and inside this budget, we are going to do the 6 things you've got here for rigorous content. I think that we probably want to have that as an educational conversation with a budget aspect, rather than it being on the last page of the budget proposal.
Right. I appreciate that. And
Going
Ms.
around.
Frazier flagged that previously, I think around the early childhood proposal, which is part of the reason that got pulled off. It was just further along than from the other proposals.
Mr. Green?
2 things. One is there's a reference in the documents you gave us on the chart, on the last block. It says Acceleration Schools Team in Central Office, see implementation below, but I didn't ever see that.
Right. I pulled the chart at the last minute in part because we didn't have budget approval, but and I think we're still in the opportunity, we might be able to do it with less of a head count. So we want to have those conversations internally. I can tell you at the high level, we're looking to repurpose the role previously as an executive director of the acceleration school. So some leader who has a similar level of turnaround expertise that Dr. Williams has, and has that gravitas that could come in and work specifically with those schools. I'm thinking about someone to coordinate the curriculum piece, and that could be from our own curriculum instruction team, so that's the question. Can we leverage our existing resources? Someone who focuses on talent for those schools specifically, so making sure that they hire early, making sure that we know where there are upcoming gaps, and ensuring that there's a selection piece with the school principal for a good fit for that kind of school, and that we're developing a pipeline longer term. And the question around community and family engagement. Because I think one thing that's been done very well, I keep using Sanders Clyde as the model, is that they have, under the leadership of Janice Malone, they've made tremendous progress in a short period of time. But one of the things that they've done is they've made sure that that's a school that has something to sell, right? Why would a student want to go to that school? Why would a parent want to send their child to that school? Part of it is it's a beautiful building, it's a rich instructional program. They have engaging creative minds in a way where kids are performing in a way that's a high-quality arts experience, which reinforces the instructional program. So what's that hook around some of these other schools? They haven't had the opportunity to go through that conversation. It doesn't seem like something we want to tell them. It's something we want to make sure that we're hearing from the community on what would be the right fit. And I do think we want to continue to make sure that we're paying attention to proven providers and whether there's a way in which we can leverage models that have worked across our system, but all of that would come before the board. So that's sort of the general structure, but again, there might be ways we can save funds by cost shifting within our current model.
So, this is my
Okay.
last question. At some point, I probably, and it may be that I need this behind the scenes, but I need you to walk me through what this actually looks like with the school. You know, it's like we take these recommendations, and it's like eventually people are going to be impacted. So I would like to, at some point, take one of the 14 schools that maybe we are looking at doing something with early on and walk me through each, and I'm happy to meet with you one-on-one if the rest of the board isn't interested in that. Yeah.
Yeah, happy to do that. I think one of the challenges is that there's not a recipe for all 14
Right,
schools.
right,
It's very
yeah.
individualized.
Right.
Like the Sanders Clyde, in some ways, I believe that our role as a district would be to get out of Ms. Malone's way, make sure if there's anything that pulls away from instruction, that we try to quickly contact operations, finance, and my team to get in there and solve the problem so she can focus on the key things she's doing. I think in other places, we need to provide a lot more support and make sure that we've got the right leadership over the long term.
Okay, going around the horn, Ms. Darby,
Nope, I'm good.
Reverend Collins,
I'm good.
Reverend Mack. Okay, the next item up is the UVA report.
I'm just gonna stay up here.
All right.
This goes to what Ms. Von Coates was saying. So this was our initial diagnostic, and we thought it was just helpful for you all to see both the places in which the district has real strengths and the places where we should be targeting our energy. Right now, we're thinking about leveraging a possible UVA partnership primarily about making leadership capacity and helping us to have a high bar around turnaround principalships. So University of Virginia has a selection model that has research behind it and is highly regarded. That's predictive of effective principals, particularly in turnaround schools. Because from my view, not all principals or principalships in our county are the same. It's very different to lead Wando, which is a large enterprise with a lot of kids, or to lead North Charleston High School, which is very different challenges. And we should be preparing our leaders for this variety of settings and recruiting and selecting them strategically earlier in the pipeline, whether they're master teachers or assistant principals, to move towards the principalship. So we're going to try to leverage their expertise around particularly recruitment, selection, and support. But I think part of the value of the diagnostic was to make sure as we were thinking through how do we provide support for turnaround schools, are we thinking about all the levers that are cheap and high impact in those environments? And I think the good news is we were fairly aligned, but I'm curious to hear what questions you have about that.
Okay, going around, Reverend Mack. Or Ms. Coates.
So again, it may be a better conversation to have when there's time devoted just to this, but I heard, different words mean different things to different people. What I heard was we need a district-wide fill, and there was 3 or 4 times after that, one of which was a teacher recruitment. I thought this was a leadership development. I didn't know it was a recruitment contract. And the next sentence says, and we are willing to help with that or craft that. So I think we might, if we enter into a UVA contract, what I'd like to do is make sure it ties back to what we were told we were entering into when the board was asked to approve that. And I don't think we thought this was going to be a district-wide initiative. And I think we thought this was going to be a talent leader development and support initiative. Because there are some things in here that just seems repetitive to reports we've had before. One of the things says we need to create our goals. There's actually an area of opportunity listed in here that it discusses the fact that we need to clearly articulate our goals. Well, if we don't articulate our goals, how are we hiring somebody to help meet the goals? If we don't have them, someone's bringing their goals to us. And things of that nature seem to be, again, this could just be that report, but that's actually page 4 if you wanted to go back and reference that. And so going to the next things, it says, you know, identifying high potential leaders, creating systems to identify high potential leaders. And all I could do was find 4 motions in the last 2 years where the board approved initiatives brought to the district to hire and find high quality leaders. And this is listing it as a gap. That's a disconnect. Either we're not doing what the board thought we were doing when we approved those funding and initiatives, or they don't know what we're doing, despite the deep dive or into this. And another one talked about strategic placement with salary supplements. That's something we do. So how is it they walked out of here not knowing that, thinking that's a gap they need to come in and get paid, for lack of a better word, to address?
Right. I mean, I think your point is well taken, but just because they're pitching doesn't mean they're buying. So, you know, like, I think they are putting it all out on the table with what are your biggest priorities, and as any vendor does, here's how we can help broadly. The way in which we're thinking they can help is specifically around this question about recruitment, selection, and support of turnaround school leaders specifically. Now, I do think, you know, you mentioned leadership and previous investments. There are initiatives on the table within Charleston County around leadership, but they don't necessarily cover our leadership pipeline needs broadly. So it doesn't take away from those pipelines. It's, they're necessary but insufficient. So for example, the partnership that we have with the Citadel is providing around 25, I think, or so leaders a year, but or towards certification, but they're not necessarily unique to a turnaround school. The diversity of that pool is not represented in Charleston County. And it is folks who are at various levels of their career, so the readiness for the principalship is different. The Low Country Consortium, I think, is another initiative that has a lot of promise, but the question is the scale and what's the, so I think a strategy from my perspective is we got to put it's not a program, it's a strategy, right? So how do these different programs contribute to the larger need that we have around pipeline and talent? And are we making sure that we're serving our needs? So I want to make sure it's got a diversity of candidates that reflects the diversity of Charleston County, making sure that we're preparing folks for a variety of levels, elementary, middle, and high, obviously, as well as alternative schools, but also making sure that we're thinking very strategically about our turnaround schools and the different needs that we've had here, where we have high principal turnover and insufficient leadership bench. And frankly, we have an insufficient leadership bench across the district, because while people are ready, they're not necessarily, I mean, they may have the degree, but they're not getting the learning experiences within the district that they might need to get, which is about match and fit, not so much about a program training.
Continuing around the horn, Mr. Frazier, any other questions? Ms. Green?
Thank you.
Ms. Darby?
I'm good.
Reverend Collins? Okay, good, go ahead,
So
Reverend.
Is it safe to say that this diagnostic report from Virginia is being compared to what we currently have in place now, and to be used as a tool or a benchmark to see where we need to improve in certain areas? Is it also safe to say that because we're looking for top talent individuals to come into the district with the changes that we're proposing for student success, that there could possibly be an increase financially, simply because to recruit these kinds of people, we have to actually be able to bring them from wherever they're coming from, if they're not local. So some of what we're doing is working, but according to this diagnostic report, comparing to where we are now, there are some greater advantages for us in this report to help us to improve, to get to where we're trying to be as far as student success and recruiting top talent resources into our schools. I mean, if we're going to make it work, definitely there has to be some changes to what we're doing now. And in this report, if you take a deeper dive into it, you'll find that there are some areas to where we can improve in CCSD to help us reach the goal that we're trying to reach. So I would say that, you know, in the budget process, I anticipate some type of bump there to be able to get to where we're trying to get to here, if this is what we're really truly talking about and making happen inside the classroom and abroad as we move forward. So I just
Mac,
want to.
I would reassure you that we're all in agreement on that. We know this is going to take new initiatives, new ideas, new strategies, and possibly new monies. We're just saying, we don't want to go straight from this to the budget. But yeah, I agree. We can't do the same thing and buy the same thing and get different results.
So I know Ms. Green asked earlier.
I'll get you next, Mr. Collins, yeah.
And I think it may be a good thing, Carolyn, to bring to us a walkthrough model of what one school would look like in those changes and kind of walk us through the process. Well, here is school A, and take us through those steps as to what those redefining areas would look like. So whichever school you pick, it doesn't matter. But I think if the board is in agreement, I think that'll be a good process for us to see what that would look like that we're about to move forward in.
All right, Mr. Hollinshed?
No, Tom, just asking the question of how they see this, and how this dealing with diversity as far as in those target schools, as far as dealing with children that need mentorship to help bring them forward. Can you ask that question for me?
Okay, did
Do you
you,
understand me?
He was asking, do you have, do you understand the need for the diversity? And I think you had began to address that. He might not have heard that.
Definitely, for leadership and for teachers, absolutely. I mean, I think the research is pretty clear on this. It's not just a nice to have, it's a have to have. That teachers of color tend to have higher expectations in terms of referring African-American students to algebra classes. So the more that we have a population in our teaching force that reflects the diversity of our students, the better off we're going to be. And that's at multiple levels of the system.
were you able to hear that, Mr. Hollinshed?
Yeah, I heard it that time. Thank you, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you. The next item up is early college, high school calendar consideration. So this is not for a vote right now, it's
That's right.
just information of the.
That's
of
right.
the-
We have some things we would need to work out on the operational level. As you can see, the core concept is the principal wants to better align the academic calendar of the school without a tribal tech so that the students can fully participate in those classes. To do that, there's some operational issues around lunch and busing and other things, which Jeff's team has very nicely figured out some workarounds. A key thing is around this categorization of the beds code at the state level. So we want to come to the board with a recommendation to see if we can figure out a workaround on that.
Okay, go ahead.
So, I guess what's going through my mind is athletics, after-school activities, clubs. We successfully have dual course students who complete tech courses and still manage to have what is considered a normal high school year. I want to make sure you're thinking of that. You know, of course, the expenses come along, but if this is aligned to tech and not aligned to the high school, are there any unintended consequences for those students who are wanting
That's our
to?
goal, is to avoid those unintended consequences, Ms. Boncoats, and I think one of the ideas. Am I supposed to do that even at this table? Yes. Cindy. I think the key thing is making sure, though, that we've thought that through, and that is the holdup. So I think we were wondering that there's only one big difference in the two schedules, and that's the scheduling of spring break. So it may be that it doesn't need to be quite as formal to allow the students to still go to Trident classes without spring break, but we'll come back to the board with a more formal. But we do not want to mix up any of the issues with athletics or other things. Thank you.
All right, the next item up is the Audit and Finance Committee review. The three items on there, the spring bond anticipation note is coming forward. Capital program budget reallocation is just moving funds around to where they're needed, and it's something that we formally will approve at our next meeting. And reallocation of real estate funds is taking the sale of the Charlestown Academy. Originally, Reverend Collins, the motion had been for that to go to Dunston. Since Dunston is already complete, the recommendation is that the funds go to Ladson, land adjacent for Ladson Elementary.
Well, when we talked about that some years ago, we talked about using that money in District 4 regardless.
Which it will be.
Yeah, but we need to identify to make sure, that's where But those dollars can be used in the classroom as well.
They can be, yes.
Because we need to make sure that's where it's needed the most, though. I know we have problems at several of our schools in North Charleston where we need more additional resources. I don't want to prescribe today to go to that school. Let's just say District 4. Then we can talk about where it goes at.
Okay,
I think you're saying that there's an action item coming to us.
it will be at the next meeting. All right, the next item up is the Terry program first reading.
Can I move to approve item B and C since they're connected? It's the same.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. What discussion?
But which one's that now? I mean,
These are the first reading of policy GCCB
Oh, policy
and
committee, man.
GCO.
oh, okay. I thought you should have known what that is.
And if I'm correct,
We didn't do that
it
one. We didn't do the
changing
update.
the
It's
Terry
charter.
So to be clear, these are both changing policies because the
Sure.
law about Terry teachers changed. So we
That confused me.
can't have a policy that doesn't match
Did it
current
need to?
law.
Just to make sure the policies follow what the state has done with the Terry program.
Okay.
So are we combined? Thank you.
All right, Priscilla's asking what we're voting on. We're voting on
Oh.
4, B, and C.
And Mr. Hollenshed, how do you vote on, we're combining 4B and C, the Terry Retention Incentive Program policies?
Aye.
Okay.
Danny, aye.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Priscilla, do you know what we're voting on?
Probably didn't hear you.
Okay, and your vote is, okay, did you get that? Thank you. Reverend Collins.
I got it now.
Okay.
Okay, and then the final item then is the dress policy proposal. Is there a motion or discussion on that?
So, Ms. Ham? And I do apologize for missing the January meeting and all of that. Where are, I'm confused. And if I'm confused, I think probably most of the public is. Are we at second reading of what is in red, or are we at second reading of the whole policy? I thought for some reason we had gone back to first reading of the stuff in purple. Where are we in terms of, what are we voting on? Or what's before us?
So both parts are now in second reading.
Thank you, thank you. So, I would like to make a motion to accept the second reading changes of the red writing on page 2 that I think somebody referenced that addresses the appeal process. I vote to, I'm not sure what the right words are, so someone can help me with the language, approve second reading of that portion.
Yeah, how about just approve second reading of the bullet that was recommended by staff and passed first reading 12/16/19. Is that right? Because that is separate than the other.
That's appropriate.
Okay, I second that.
Okay.
So let's talk about the.
Any discussion?
Yes, so let's talk about the rest of it. The team and I worked on.
Wait a minute, Mr. Collins. We got a motion on the floor about accepting a portion. Is your remarks going to be about that portion or the rest of the?
The rest of the policy.
Can you vote on that portion and then
Sure.
you ask questions about?
Well, I want to see by making a motion of that part too, unless you want to do that, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I don't know if you guys have a copy of the policies from the other district that I sent you guys. Do you guys have a copy of the other ones?
They do.
Like Somerville and stuff like that? You have that, Reverend Mack?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so when you look at their policies, there's a very little difference from what they've done already, but we're trying to copy our policy. They've already had,
Yes.
when you look at the,
Hey, can you talk in?
yeah,
microphone?
okay.
And Mr. Hollenshed, I don't know that you're going to be able.
When you look at,
to
I'm gonna, my mic's still on.
understand. He just passed out.
The mic's not on.
So Reverend Collins, let me make this easy for you to help me understand. Are you telling me that CCSD does not have a policy against clothing that is midriff, exposes the stomach? Do we not have a policy?
No, what we have is a lot of this is outlined,
Just a yes or no question.
No.
CCSD does not have a
No.
policy against midriff tops.
not to my knowledge.
Yep.
And well, unfortunately, I thought my hard copy was in the packet, but I don't have my hard copy in the packet, so I'm on the screen. And no, so we don't have that.
Okay, well,
Everything-
can we vote on this one motion and then you make what other motion you
Okay,
want?
so-
Your motion?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, you want to do that first?
If that's
All
okay,
right, go ahead
yeah.
then, go ahead.
All right.
And I vote yes to that too.
I vote in favor, Kate. Priscilla votes in favor.
Okay, Mr. Hollenshed, how do you vote on that?
I'm gonna stay right now.
Okay, yeah, it's confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can you read it out so we can all understand what we are approving?
Just the
Okay.
second part of it.
The red writing on it.
Talking about for the person on the phone. I
Oh,
know
yeah.
We
So-
can read it, but.
I'm sorry.
Julie, can you tell us so right. Kevin, can you hear me? And probably don't need the speakerphone for
The
that.
chairman needs to
Yeah.
read it.
Yeah, I can hear you good, can you?
Can you read it?
Yeah, I don't have
You're
it in
the
front of me.
all right.
There you go.
It's to approve the second reading of revised policy in red, writing on page 2, recommended by staff, passed first reading on December 16th, 2019. The motion by Cindy and a second by Kate.
Can you read it? Can you read what it
Yeah,
says?
it
The
says,
changes?
and with respect to appealing or exempting a child from the policy, it goes through how parents would apply to have the policy reviewed
Regarding a dress
Well,
code.
read it.
regarding dress
A
code.
uniform, a uniform.
This is uniform.
Uniform.
Why don't you read it straight
Has
out?
everybody voted on that? Okay,
Tyler, do you want to read it straight out? I can hear.
Change the iPod.
okay, Mr. Hollenshed is aye. Reverend Collins, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Okay. All right, what is your second motion then, as we wait on the
Okay, so-
tally to come up?
All right. So what I was trying to say is that when you see these schools around us, even in Columbia, have adopted policies restricting the length on children's clothing and specifying covering up certain parts of covering up the stomach, for example, covering the back, not wearing see-through materials or stuff with holes that expose the flesh. Our policies for our school district hasn't been enforcing these things. And if you visit some of the campuses, you will see for yourself, those that hadn't been there yet, that some of our clothes, our children, are highly exposed. Some of them are barely covered up. There are things showing that should not be showing. And we as responsible adults have to set an example how our kids come to school. These aren't adults we're dealing with children that don't know better yet. If we don't teach them to cover themselves, have respect for their bodies, nobody else will. That's our responsibility to set something in place that tells a child, well, if a miniskirt is too short, put it to this length. Some schools say, well, have it 3 inches past the fingers. Some say just past the longest finger on the hand. Some say to the knee. Some say below the knee. We have to have something in place that sets the standard what we're trying to accomplish. So I brought 3 sets of policies in here from neighboring schools so you guys can see. And I passed them out a little while ago. These aren't mine. These policies here are stricter than what we have in place already.
Are you ready to make a motion?
Yes. I move to approve that we accept JICA as presented today.
Okay, we've got a motion, is there a second?
Okay, it'll second me.
I'll second it, but I'm not going to vote in favor of it.
Oh, let's talk about why then. Let's talk about why.
Okay, we've got a second. All right,
Okay, I'm not allowed to do that one. Okay.
You know how to do what?
She can't second a motion and then don't vote on approving it. That's part of her motion.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, that makes sense, yeah. But so I need to have feedback from the board if we're doing something, if I'm doing something wrong, and the staff is that are doing something wrong, we need to know what that is, what we're doing wrong.
Hold on.
the motion, we've got a question. The motion was written out in our packet. It's, a couple paragraphs long, so.
And then basically talks about, you cover your back.
Make the motion on what you wrote.
Reverend Collins has made the motion. Are you seconding it?
Who?
Yeah, are you, Mr. Hollenshed?
This is different.
Okay, then there's not, Reverend Collins without a second. there's no vote moving forward. Thank you, the motion dies. The next item up is public comments. Ms. Taylor, is there any further? Okay, the next item up is upcoming meetings, which will be 2 weeks from today will be our next committee meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? That I skipped over earlier for the coronavirus update. Mr. Brother.
Back in session?
Yes.
Oh, let me get, are we taking action? Do I need to get Priscilla back?
No.
Okay.
Can I keep this? Got it.
Are you still there, Mr. Hollenshed?
Okay, so Mr. Hollinshed and Ms. Jeffrey just, we've skipped over quickly the coronavirus update and just wanted to get that before we leave here today. Thank you.
Board Chair, Committee Chair, Vice Chair, Board members, and Superintendent. As the safety and health of our students and staff is first and foremost in our mission, monitoring the conditions, developing and implementing preventive protocols, and ensuring that our school district is ready to react to the changing conditions of the coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19. It is our top priority. Joining me here today are just a few of the many heroes that are working on this each and every day. To my immediate right is Brock Clary. He's our Emergency Preparedness Coordinator. To his left is Ellen Nitz, our Director of Nursing Services, and you'll hear from her in a few minutes. And finally, Dennis Burgess. Well, I got Rhonda on there too. Dennis Burgess, our Plant Operations Officer, responsible for our cleaning crews and distribution of supplies. And certainly, last but not least, Mr. Ron Kromps, our Associate for Facilities Management. I won't cover all that you've heard in the national news, but I'd like to share an overview related to schools which was received just a few hours ago from the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. That's how fast things are changing. COVID-19 is a respiratory illness caused by a new virus, and everyone is learning about it each and every day. There's no current vaccine to prevent against COVID-19. At this point, the best way to prevent infection is to avoid being exposed to the virus that causes it. Stopping transmission or the spread of the virus through everyday practice is the best way to keep people healthy. We as a school district, working together with our local health departments, have an important role in slowing the spread of this disease to help ensure students have a safe and healthy learning environment. Schools serve students, staff, and visitors from throughout the community. All of these people may have close contact in the school setting, often sharing spaces, equipment, and supplies. Our current posture is in alignment with the details of this DHEC guidance today, and I'm going to cover a few of those items with you today, right now. First and foremost, we continue to remain engaged with all the area authorities on COVID-19, including DHEC, the State Department of Education, Charleston County Emergency Management, and local municipalities. Within our schools, our daily and nightly cleaning uses EPA-registered disinfectants that are effective in neutralizing COVID-19 type viruses. There's nightly cleaning of all horizontal touch surfaces and other high-touch areas like light switches, doorknobs, etc. Soap dispensers are checked 3 times a day and at night and filled if necessary. We also have a stock of replacement soap dispensers, as we do have a couple of schools in which kids are deciding to do some damage. So we're ready to replace those, again, 3 times a day and at night. Most recently, we've got a plan in place to provide free labeled disinfecting spraying bottles filled at central stations within each school, with recommendations how to safely use these to any teacher that wishes to have one. This will help prevent unauthorized cleaners from coming into the schools. We have a lot of folks that really want to help us by dropping off supplies, but we want to make sure that the supplies we use are safe for our kids. So those instructions, those bottles, along with the ability to refill those, will be completed by the end of this week, and I hope that it's actually earlier than that. We're also looking at having a central location for hand sanitizer refill. So every teacher's got hand sanitizer bottles in their classroom, but we want to make it convenient to get those refilled and not have to worry about bringing in the smaller bottles. So we're hoping that, again, by the end of this week, we have a central station, at least one in each school, in which they can come back and fill up those smaller bottles if they need to. Our buses, we now have a standardized protocol, so we don't have bus drivers just doing the best that they can or best that they want to do. We've established protocol that all bus drivers are doing exactly the same thing from both of our service agents once a day. We're monitoring our attendance rates for our students, teachers, and other key staff. We're comparing that average rate of attendance per week to the typical attendance rates, and if we exceed the numbers, we'll certainly take a deeper dive into those schools. And that's something that Ellen Nitz works with the students and has been for each and every day in the past. Field trips currently outside the district are still proceeding in accordance with the current DHEC and CDC guidance. Today, there has been an update to that, recommending that we consider postponing or canceling student international travel. Right now, certainly, we don't want them going to the 4 countries on the level 3 list, but we'll take a closer look at that with leadership tomorrow, especially with spring break coming up and the fact that we do have classes that are planning to go out of country. Our Office of Strategy and Communication will continue to be proactive in keeping our families and faculty informed. We've had 2 district-wide messages that have gone out. By close of business today, they've come up with a rolling update that we'll have very clearly displayed on our website so that you can look day to day as we get information in and what we've done, so that you don't have to wait for an email, you don't have to wait for a message. They can click on our webpage to see where we stand as it stands right now. With that, let me turn it over to Ellen Nitz. She's going to talk about some of the nursing service initiatives and protocols that we have in place as well.
So good afternoon. Some of the things that we were trying to do through nursing services is to take a very proactive and preventative approach with all of our schools. That includes our staff and our students. So we have unveiled a program today, which is our hand washing kits. These kits were delivered over the weekend to every school. Inside you will find there's educational material. It is a bottle of Glow Germ as well as a UV light. It's a very simple kit to be able to use. Instructions have been sent to all of the school nurses and staff as well, because we want classroom education to be going on. This is a very, it's a very visible product. As soon as you put a pea size on your hand and rub it in, you use it like a lotion and then use the UV light, it actually will produce a germ-like appearance, showing how germs can be on hands. I'm asking for teachers to go through and have 3 volunteers. The first person would shake number 2's hand. The second person would then give a high five to the third person to show the transmission of how germs can occur. Okay? Very simplistic. Then another student comes up, shines the light on these germs to be able to show how the germs are spread from person to person. Then the kids are asked to go and wash their hands their normal way without any education being done beforehand. As they come back, we investigate again with the UV light. The germs are then seen again, and then we do a video with some education about the 20-minute hand washing and making sure. I'm sorry, yes. Thank you. That wasn't one of the changes. No, that wasn't a change, wasn't a change. My mistake. I was talking to a 3rd grade class at Pinckney today, and Henry said that as well. but anyway, the 20-second hand wash, and therefore when you shine the light after, the kids go back and continue their 20-second wash and shine it, they can see that they've removed almost all the germs just with that small educational piece. This is not only for COVID-19. This is something that we had implemented back with H1N1, which has been 2009. So this is another program that we just kind of rejuvenated again, making sure supplies were there for each and every school. I do have refill available for these bottles, so if we run out at one of our larger schools, we're able to do that. You get about 75 to 100 applications with this. But I actually did a demonstration in the classroom today at Pinckney and had great response, not only from the students, but there's a buzz with the teachers too. They all are very eager to get this kit and get it, to get it used right away. So that's some of our preventative, proactive measures from nursing services. The other thing that I want to assure you is we have 100 school nurses throughout the district. These nurses are also busy assessing our kids. We're taking temperatures. We are charting that. We actually have a feature within our electronic documentation system that allows us to run biosurveillance, that I can talk to DHEC when we get to certain levels, such as 20% of our students being out of a classroom for a certain category of symptoms, which with COVID, that would be the fever with a cough or shortness of breath, and now even to include sore throat. Sounds a lot like flu. That's actually what, our medical professionals are also hearing. So our next step is that, of course, if our kids meet any of that criteria, or staff, they are instructed to go home, call their physician, and we're telling people call, don't just go. MUSC has actually partnered as well, allowing people to do telehealth visits, okay, which is a wonderful thing. And then from there, they are instructed on their next recommendation, whether they come into the office or how they should be tested. So we're doing everything that we can proactively, not to make sure that we keep everybody calm, and knowing that the best defense that they have against these germs is good old soap and water.
Thanks, Ellen. So the next question is, what if we have a positive result of COVID-19, which is some form or fashion directly related to our schools? So each and every instance, what did I say?
No, keep
I'm
going.
sorry, I thought I said
There's a
something.
gentleman back there raising his hand
Okay.
to have a question.
All right.
And I'm sure we'll get to you when they get done with, somebody will come to help him.
All right. So if we have a positive result in some form or fashion, somebody in the school or out of the school, each event has to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. We can't come out and say we're going to do X or we're going to do Y or we're going to do Z, because we have to evaluate where, when, and how this happened. First and foremost, we would follow any guidance that we receive from DHEC in regards to school cleanings, closures, other activities related to COVID-19. If that guidance is not provided, we'll implement a number of activities. And Brock here has reached out to a number of school districts, Washington State in particular, that has already had closures, so we've gotten some ideas of how other districts have handled things. They delegated to the school district, so the school district made the calls on the closures, at least up until recently. But we would have to decide upon early release, delays, or closings, some other schedule changes. We'll certainly look at the deep disinfection of schools affected by those confirmed with a case with our fogger systems. We're going to increase the screening in our affected schools by nursing services, and certainly maintain our communications with our support personnel and our families. Right now, learning services, in the event that that does happen, we will evaluate it immediately and make a decision. However, there are a couple of things that have to be done. We're working on right now is learning services, looking at the continuity of education in the event that we have to close. Very important to try to find a way to continue to do our jobs and allow the students to continue to get educated. Our IT department has identified the capabilities available for continuity of education. We'll be briefing those with leadership tomorrow and move ahead with developing that plan. Bottom line is our number one goal is safety and health of our students and faculty. We'll continue to plan, we'll continue to monitor, we'll continue to adjust to this end as it relates to COVID-19. This concludes the presentation, subject to your questions.
What questions go around Reverend Mack?
And thank y'all for, of course, we don't spend all day thinking about these things, so thank y'all. You came up with some things I hadn't thought about, which does bring up the student-sponsored travel out of country. You said we're going to be making some decisions. Is there a mechanism to make sure the board knows about that one way or the other? Because that could be that could be a question that might raise in radar. The other thing is, and I don't know, this may involve Ms. Ham, the legality of this, but employees traveling over spring break. Do we have employees and students traveling over spring break? Is there some sort of plan for reentry to assess what happens when they travel and come back? Because I'm thinking we're going to have kids gone for a week, going places, possible overseas travel, and then on Monday we all show back up at school and work again.
All those are federal level
Right.
quarantine.
I was going to say they're that's why. So is there
So the question that has made its way to my office is whether or not we can impose something more than what the federal government is doing, and my answer has been no.
I agree, we
So-
don't impose something, do we have a way of finding out? For example, the one presumptive positive in Charleston County was an employee who traveled overseas, who came back and said to their employer, I traveled overseas, I think I should stay home. I'm not saying we should stop them from doing what they want to do. I'm wondering on the other side of it, are we prepared to re-accept everybody back into school when it opens?
Right, it's my understanding, and maybe Ellen can speak a little bit more to this, is that they are actually testing people as they come back into the country.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're
Yes.
targeted from the high risk going
Yes.
to level 3.
And they're testing them all
People are coming back.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
And of course, if anyone was ever symptomatic, they should be staying home if they're sick. And that is another big message that we are getting out to all of our families.
So two things. One is the odds of us closing a whole school. You've addressed that and how we would have continuity of education. I think the more likely event is that we could have a student or two or three who may have been exposed and finding an individualized way to keep their education going so that they don't get behind. So I hope that's part of the conversation. I'll also tell you that the Medical University has a limited number of kits to test people with, and so unless they are highly symptomatic, they are reserving the right not to test people and then just sending them home and telling them to stay there for a little while. So we just have to be aware of limitations of our partners in these things too, because we may have people making decisions without full information.
Ms. Green?
No, just thank you for the information.
Ms. Darby?
Thank you very much for the hard work.
Reverend Collins?
Mr. Brewer, when you, when the employers are doing cleaning, disinfecting and stuff, what are you using to clean with?
Well, it is an EPA-approved disinfectant, and if you've got the specific names, there's 6 or 7 different
No,
products.
that part's okay. And are you using, what's wipes or cloths? What are you cleaning with?
Microfiber cloths.
Cloths.
Use a microphone.
Are they reusable?
Wash them and reuse them.
So let's say you clean this table here with the cloth, and you go to another table, and maybe one of them has some really bad germs on that cloth that you steady clean those different tables with. So I'm just wondering if maybe you need to have an abundance of cloth or,
You do realize they're spraying something on the cloth to kill that?
I understand what you're saying, but
Okay,
still, that doesn't mean it kills it though. Well, what I'm saying, you can actually, in cleaning, you can actually spray the germs from one table all throughout the whole building if you're using the same one cloth or same one, right? But what I'm asking is there something we can get that's disposable? And once you clean it one time, you can get rid of it. That's what I'm asking. Do you have actually anything like that? Or can you maybe shop around for it, maybe if it's feasible?
I mean, we can look at that.
Yeah, but you see what I'm saying, right? Because the logic is that we don't want to continue.
They're trained to do this, they're following best practices, and so I think we should trust them to do that.
Well, yeah, I'll give you something to think about. Yeah, that's a good point because, if I cough into a rag and stick it in water and come wipe your face with it, would you wouldn't that?
Well, they're not, I know enough about that, they're not sticking it in water.
But I think, but y'all watching the.
Thank y'all very much,
Yeah.
and is
But
there a
thank
motion
y'all.
to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Make some of your cloths I can use on cake.
You didn't get a chance, man. I saw you wanted.